Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School.
This week, we're going to start our new festival with Paul Verhoeven. We're going to do 1990s Total Recall.
Let's dive into this sucker. Hey everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see /hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all the different places and spaces. Hit the notification bell, and that will let you know when we have new material coming out, like we do this week.
Absolutely. And follow along with the festivals. That's what we do them for. Super excited.
Yep.
So, Paul Verhoeven, this was your idea. Tell me about your love of Paul Verhoeven and what we're going to expect through this festival.
So I think, as I said last week, we're kind of doing this like chunk of his career. I remember seeing one of his very first films from the 70s called Turkish Delight, starring a super young Rutger Hauer. I think the two of them knew each other from film school. He's a Danish director, I believe. Is that correct? He's from the
Verhoeven. I'm not sure.
Netherlands? Would that make him a Dane? I believe that's right.
Yeah.
I know he's from the Netherlands. I think that makes him a Dane. I think that makes him Danish. But the first handful of movies that he made were in his native country, were in his native tongue. And he really started making more American cinema in the early 80s. And then along comes 1987's RoboCop, which we'll be reviewing in this festival. And then after that movie, he has this string of like crazy success to the point where in 87 he does RoboCop. 3 years later when he does Total Recall, it is the biggest box office movie by that point. Like it had made the most amount of money. I'm sure it's not now, but by 1990 it was like the number one popcorn film, which is what rewatching it now is kind of bonkers that's true. Like
Totally.
It doesn't make any sense that this movie should have been that big. And obviously we'll talk about this. A big part of that is Arnold Schwarzenegger, but again, and then moving all the way through into the late 90s, things like Basic Instinct,
Starship
Troopers. By the time you get into that stuff, it's like, for me at least, and I know you're just a couple years younger than me, but like the Verhoeven action movie model was like a really big part of my like formidable, like right into puberty kind of experiences. And I think like getting older and rewatching his films, how clever they actually are. And a lot of what they have to say sort of sociopolitically is really interesting. And all went over my head as a little kid. I just loved the amount of violence and gore.
The action and the three boobs. Yeah,
exactly. It was that kind of stuff. But as an adult rewatching it, it's like, it's very interesting. And then he kind of just like spun back out into doing sort of whatever movies. He did Hollow Man in 2000,
right.
And then he's done a bunch of stuff where it's movies where I look at it and I'm like, I see the movie poster and I see there's some people in it I kind of recognize, and I'm like, I've never heard of this movie. And it came out in 2016 and I don't even know what it is. And so it's just weird that this guy for this one period of time was like the biggest shit on the planet.
For sure, and I don't know how much I knew that. I knew of the movies. RoboCop was always a movie my parents had, but it was like rated R, so I couldn't watch it.
Totally.
It was one that I kind of had to sneak and watch, and but I don't think I really understood like, oh, this guy has been doing all of these movies. But I totally agree. I think this is total fodder for, a horny 90s kid.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Totally.
And a suburbanite kid where you get fun action. It is a clever story, and obviously a lot of that is Philip K. Dick and his short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. which this is based off of. But this is written by the guys who wrote Alien.
Yep.
As well.
Dan O'Bannon and
yeah.
why can't I think of the other dude's name? I always do this. Dan O'Bannon and the other guy was Schutz, and then Gary Goldman, who wrote Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay.
So it was all three of them that did that. Now,
funny, originally slated for Cronenberg to direct.
Yep.
And have William Hurt as Quaid, which would be a totally different movie.
it was between William Hurt and Richard Dreyfuss was the other choice.
Yeah, I mean both choices would be very different. Obviously, but I think they saw the benefit of having someone like Arnold do this, and Cronenberg was not down to this kind of machismo kind of action that it was turning into. And so he bowed out, and Verhoeven took over. But I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, the other part that's interesting about that is that in the original short story, in Philip K. Dick's short story, it really is about, there is alien stuff. Mars is in there. The alien stuff is in there. But it's more so that, it's the recall as this place where you can get an implanted memory. That's really the Philip K. Dick piece of it. All of the spy stuff, the intrigue stuff, like the fact that it turns into this more sort of adventure action film, all of that is from the writers, right? That wrote the script. But then all the all of the sort of mutant uprising stuff, that was all Cronenberg. Like all the Kuato stuff, all of that was stuff that Cronenberg was adding into it. And again, which again makes sense because Cronenberg's another one of these guys who very much likes to wrap his horror movies within a sort of social politic kind of lens, right? Like this is one of the things he absolutely loves is like The Fly is actually about AIDS, right? Like there's so many different ways that you can look at this and say, oh, this is something that he wanted to talk about politics, and he wanted to talk about this uprising
totally
of the little people, right?
Yeah.
And all of that stuff is missing from the original short story. The original short story is much smaller in scope, much more similar to something like A Scanner Darkly, which there was a lot, I think that this is like, we talked about this when we did A Scanner Darkly, but like Philip K. Dick, he kind of had that William Burroughs thing where it's like the sci-fi junkie who loves the story about the guy that's so deeply undercover he doesn't know he's undercover, right? Like that's such a very like druggy sci-fi kind of concept.
For sure.
And that's definitely painted over a lot here, but there's also some really smart things happening here that you have to attribute to those three screenwriters.
I do have to say that a lot of people are like, oh, he was before his time or whatever. I think Verhoeven was exactly directing at the perfect time. He is a perfect 90s director.
Exactly. I completely agree. And what's interesting is like they talk about that this movie was like at the time one of the most expensive movies that had ever been made.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And the thing is it's like, yes, there are all these amazing practical effects. There are all these huge sets that they built. But at the same time, a lot of this movie looks like shit. Like it's lit so poorly and it's so flat. And it looks like the quality of it looks like a soap opera.
And there's definitely scenes where you're like, oh, that's the stunt person for sure.
Yeah, that's not the line of dialogue that person said. The ADR is terrible on it, right? Or like the blue screen is really bad. But I will say with all of that, and I kept vacillating back and forth between this, is I kept going, that looks like shit. And I even remember as a kid thinking that it looked like shit because I was one of those, okay, we've talked on this show a lot about how big of a nerd I was when I was little, but I was one of the kids. Did you ever see like Starlog magazine? Did you ever see Starlog?
Nope.
So some of you out there, Mark Middlemas, I know, remembers Starlog magazine. But essentially what it was is you had Fangoria, right? And Fangoria was like, if you were a total gorehound horror guy, you'd get Fangoria. And I had that too. And so I had like a poster of the jogger who gets run over in the original Pet Cemetery and his brain's falling out. I had that up on my wall as a teenager instead of a girl in a bikini. So the science fiction version of Fangoria was Starlog. and they had a whole spread in the like fall of '89 about Total Recall, and I had all these on-set photos, and I remembered, and I was like, oh my god. But I remembered also thinking,
Was
like,
it Rob Bottin?
yes,
right?
yes, it was Rob Bottin, yes. And so it's like,
and he does the special effects here. Joe Dante guy, we've talked about him a lot over the years.
And so
masterful with The Thing, Carpenter, all that stuff.
so they had a bunch of photos of those things and people on set, like at the Venusville bar, right, which is where Quaid goes to. And I remember looking at the pictures and being like, oh, they look a little corny. They'll look better in the movie. And then I remember sitting in the theater going, oh, they kind of still look like shit. But it did not change one iota how much I love the movie. And watching it again now, I was like, the amount of schlock that it has of that corniness still totally applies because the overall vision is done so well. The overall graphics look so good. The mutants are so interesting looking. The story is so interesting. The stuff that is happening with all those models and miniatures looks rad, even though you can totally tell it's a miniature. It's really cool.
I think all of these movies, outside of probably Basic Instinct, have that look and feel to it. I think maybe it's a little more on purpose in Starship Troopers or something like that, where they're really kind of playing up the jokey.
They're hamming it up, yeah.
But it's still, it still has those elements. Something that I didn't realize is that Minority Report is the sequel to this movie. Did you know that? Or it was supposed to be.
Yeah, not in the original short story, but when they got into, well, we should talk about this really quick because, you talked about the inception of this with Cronenberg and him wanting William Hurt and then Schwarzenegger coming in. Really, Schwarzenegger coming in was
changed it.
He basically signed on as an executive producer on this thing. And
I was going to say he had his hands in this a lot, and he changed a lot of things.
Well, down to the point where it was like they were getting ready to start to promote it, or they were starting to promote it, and he was like looking at the numbers and he was like, this isn't right, we need to go back and recut the trailer. And so he took the trailer to a different group and he was like, look, we're missing out on the Martians here, we're missing out on this stuff, like they're trying to make it like it's one of my regular movies. And so he recut the trailer, which is why it became so popular.
Yeah, he was supposed to play RoboCop originally.
That's right.
And the suit didn't fit or something, but he really liked Paul Verhoeven, and he loved the movie RoboCop. But it definitely seems like Arnold's got some power, and not just physical power. He obviously has that, but but I think it's kind of important to realize, like, how I don't know. You think about being in a room where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes and is like, you guys need to do this differently.
Yeah.
Go around the corner, much faster, and then you go bang, 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 bang. Can you not? Why not? Let's do it again.
I'm telling you. Well, you know what's interesting too is Verhoeven in an interview said that he was like, Arnold Schwarzenegger has no ego. He's like, he has zero ego. And he said, which I know sounds really weird. And he's like, but it's true. Like, he basically said to me, I want you to direct me. He's like, I want you to be direct with me. And he's like, I can handle it. And he's like, you tell me exactly what it is that you want me to do. And he's like, so I would be so blunt with him where I'd be like, you have to do that take again. You look stupid in it. And Arnold would be like, okay.
Him, and I helped him. I was laying with him on the floor or in the mud and say it's like this, and you should, I think you have to give more accent to this word or push this a little bit harder. It has to be a bit faster. Don't be so slow. Do it 3, 4, 5 times. And because Arnold is a guy that has in fact no ego in that direction, he's not like, oh, basically don't hurt me. It's more like, oh fuck yeah.
He's like, he just wanted it to be the best performance humanly possible,
Obviously we have Arnold in this movie. We've talked about him a little bit already. Sharon Stone in this, Michael Ironside, and Ronnie Cox from Beverly Hills Cop.
And RoboCop.
Who plays a pretty, that's right, he's also in RoboCop, of course. He plays a pretty harsh character, very different than the nice detective in.
Well, Cohagen is this pretty severe character. I mean, I guess his character in RoboCop is also.
Yeah, that's true.
Pretty much as severe, and apparently, the guy, why can't I think of his name, from RoboCop, who ended up playing Red Foreman.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But he apparently he was first offered the part that Michael Ironsides plays, and he was like, it's a little too close. Dick. He's like, it's a little too close to the RoboCop character. So, but Michael Ironsides, my God, like he's definitely just one of those fantastic character actors.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into the acting and stuff in a bit. So 2084, they don't actually say it in the movie, but it's supposed to be set in 2084. Douglas Quaid is Schwarzenegger here, and we get these dreams he's having at the very beginning of Mars, and having the same thing, and he just keeps talking about Mars. He wants to go to Mars. There's something about it that he keeps going to. So he ends up going to Recall, where he can buy, a fake memory implanted into your head, like you're talking about. This is Eternal Sunshine did the same thing, kind of, right?
Totally. It was just the opposite, right? It was like getting rid of it. Yeah.
But we have this opening scene with him and Sharon Stone, and he wakes up and it's all a dream. And oh, Arnold, I've missed you. But his one-liners are so shitty in this movie.
They're amazing.
And the best. Come on, baby, you know you're the girl of my dreams.
Come on, baby, you know you're the girl of my dreams. It's
missed
one
you.
long word, It's like,
If we get a young Sharon Stone here, she looks gorgeous.
yeah, she hasn't done a lot by that point.
Yeah, I think this is one of her first movies. But he wants to move to Mars. It's been colonized. Like you said, we're in this world of mutants as well, so I think that's something important to kind of create for the world aspect.
Well, if I can, I want to go through this sort of like, I was like, towards the end of watching the movie, I was like, I'm just going to do a synopsis. I was like, I just want to see, because like, so much happens in this movie, and so much happens in this movie in terms of the action, in terms of like the chase scenes, in terms of the characters that you're meeting. But if I may, okay. Humans settle on Mars, which has no atmosphere. There's an abundance of a precious mineral, which makes it a target for big business, namely Vilos Cohagen. Cohagen builds cities under domed glass for the miners that he has working for him to live in. But he's a cheapskate, so the domes are built poorly, and the longer people live on Mars, the more that they're subject to mutations. This creates an underground resistance of mutants looking to get equal rights, led by a resistance fighter named Kuato. Mining on Mars stops when Cohagen's workers discover alien artifacts and some sort of great 500,000-year-old reactor that would melt a glacier at the planet's core and create breathable atmosphere, but would also destroy the precious mineral and would make Cohagen powerless, so he doesn't want to do it. The mutant resistance gets wind of this because, in addition to physical mutations, a lot of them are also psychic, right? But they don't know exactly what the reactor is, but it gives them even more of a reason to rebel. Cohagen wants to infiltrate the mutant resistance to kill Kuato, but none of his guys can get close to Kuato due to their cover being blown because they're psychic, right? So his best friend, Carl Hauser, Cohagen's second in command, volunteers to go into such deep cover by having his memories erased so he can join the mutant uprising. And that uprising is willing to take Hauser on because they know that he has the information about the reactor. Now that is where our movie starts. And the fact is, even like 12-year-old me could follow that by the end of the movie, which is like a brilliant feat on its own. That something this and that's without even getting into is this a dream? Is it not a dream? Is this a real memory? This is what the implant was supposed to be, blah, 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 like weirdness thing. Just the like espionage aspect of this with the mutant uprising and all that is like, it's a whole thing. Like, it's huge, right?
There's a lot of layers here. I mean, I think you just laid them all out. And the fact that you say this is all at the beginning of the movie, I hadn't really put that together.
Yeah. This is all things that have already happened before our movie has started.
I do feel like the first 20 minutes or so seem like they're really happening. I feel like that's reality until he gets that shot, and then things are up in the air.
Which they claim. Now again, this is like you said, this might be in the new version of reality, but they say we never gave it to him. What do they reference? They're like, we hit a memory patch, right? Like something that had already been erased.
Yeah, it's a schizoid embolism or something like that.
Yeah. I love
blew my cover.
Yeah, I love that whole scene where he's getting sold on the dream.
That's a great scene.
What's always the same? You are. Why not be a secret agent? Like that whole section of it is so much fun and so unique.
Yeah. For a memory of a lifetime. Nothing but first-class memories. Everything is perfect.
Right.
Yeah. So I do love that. Like, when he's talking to me, you're like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, how real is it? How does it not, that kind of, and then we get to see how real it is. I think the idea of an ego trip and an alternative personality and all this stuff, him being a secret agent, it's just, of course Arnold isn't a construction worker. I think we know this. I know in the book he's supposed to be very nebbish and like an office kind of,
yeah, he doesn't have a construction
collar guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's Arnold. He's construction worker makes more sense, but secret agent makes way more sense.
Well, and I think that one thing that Arnold said early on in an interview was really interesting, where he said, I liked the idea of this. He said, I liked the irony of having a character who's very physically strong, but they've messed with his mind. So he's confused and he doesn't know who to trust. So he can punch his way out of it, but he also makes mistakes and trusts the wrong people over and over and over again. And that's his weakness, even though he might be physically strong. And I was like, oh, that's actually, that does really work here, is that, he is really confused through a lot of this. And he does have some really great corny one-liners, but he also Definitely. There's a lot of times where he's just like, where he's like, you're me? Like it's this charm to that confused, almost Keanu Reeves-esque delivery of those lines, and it makes it work. It makes it it sells it, I think. And I mean, I hope I'm not strictly speaking through the lens of nostalgia, but it feels like it does to me.
Yeah, for sure. I also think something that sticks is they did a great job with the future here. It's very interesting to think that Philip K. Dick also did Minority Report, because there's a lot of similar elements to the future. They're probably a lot cleaner and look better in Minority Report. But, I mean, they did a great job with the body scan stuff, the TV on the wall, the digital nails, the Johnny Cab.
The Johnny Cab. I love the Johnny Cab.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the exercising here where she's like mimicking what that person is doing.
Yeah.
Like, that seems like that could still happen.
Totally.
I know this is 2084, but, video calls, they got down the mirror image of himself wearing that bracelet.
Yeah, that stuff's great. I love the hologram bracelet
Even the
stuff.
cars, yeah.
Yeah, the tiny weird
I thought they did a
little
good
cars.
job.
I also really, really loved the brutalist architecture here. These really big concrete slab buildings that seem to be what this future is made of. Again, very reminiscent of sort of like
Fifth Element.
Well, or I was even going to say, is this 25 years after RoboCop, right? Where it still is
for sure.
These big concrete slab buildings, very brutalist architecture.
Architecture that's called New Brutalism. It was a very dark, a bit heavy-handed, concrete style that gave the movie a very definite architectural production design.
And then even down to this great Martian reactor core we get in the third act feels like something from maybe from Giger, right? These big crazy columns with the heated core elements that come down through them. Like the scope and size of that, even though we know we're looking at a miniature, even though we know we're looking at blue screen with Ronnie Cox walking down that little pathway in front of it, it still is just like, you kind of just have to be like, and I was thinking so much about this when I watched this movie, is I was like, in this day and age of CGI everything, I just realized something, which is, it doesn't matter if it looks real as long as it looks cool. If it looks cool, then it doesn't matter if it looks real, right? And for this, like those big scenes where we are watching the little miniature train like go into the huge volcanic thing and on Mars, you're like, well, of course it's a model, but it looks cool. Like it just looks,
it does, yeah.
It's neat looking, like it's fun to watch. And so it doesn't matter that that it's a model, right?
Absolutely. I think he, as crappy as some of his movies might look, I think there's some deep care into some other elements and aspects that shine through.
That's a great way. That is a great way of putting it, for sure.
So he goes to recall his friend Harry, that he works with, is trying to get him not to go, trying to give him a hint to not go, and he ends up going anyway. And Harry and his goons kind of kidnap him and put it, they go in the parking garage or whatever, and he steals. He fights Harry and his friends, but he's got a guy on each arm, right? And he jumps and double kicks.
Yeah.
He does that exact same move in Twins that was made 2 years later. Just saying, he stole that move from Twins.
Listen, if I was gonna go,
pull it up.
If I was gonna go with anyone's expertise when it comes to a shot-for-shot scene grab from Twins, it's Adam Palcher, because I know how much you love that movie.
Oh, yes. I love that movie.
It's a good movie. It's a very good movie. Dude,
Weren't they supposed to make a sequel? Did that ever happen?
yeah, it's Junior. Isn't that the sequel? It's just
No. No, it's not.
he
I
gives
love
birth to Danny DeVito's character.
I'm pregnant.
Anyway, I think
I love.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that particular scene where his coworker shows up. Up to this point, there's been this great peppering of sort of paranoia, right? Just these certain longing scenes of Sharon Stone watching him leave the house, and you just go, something's up, right? And then the same thing with his coworker. You're like, something's up. I don't know what it is yet. But when he shows up, his coworker shows up with those guys, and they're going to kill him. Like, it's scary. Like, you're like, oh shit, like this isn't a dream. This is a thing that's actually happening. And from that moment, something happens in this movie. From most other science fiction movies, I would say, with the exception of maybe the Alien series, which is it gets super violent and super fucking gory. And Arnold isn't just like shooting people and killing them. He's twisting necks. He's popping heads off. He's decapitating people. He's breaking backs, right? And at one point, puncturing someone in the neck to make a hole the size of an apple. I mean, it's kind of unlike most other science fiction, in particular science fiction action films I can think of, right? For the most part, it's like, you're thinking like Star Wars, Star Trek, where you shoot somebody with a laser and it makes their body glow blue for a second, and then they fall on the ground and they're dead. And here, there are corpses galore.
Yeah, there's a high body count in this one, for
which
sure.
Which is pretty cool. It really sets it apart.
I do love this early twist with Sharon Stone turning on him really quickly. Like, you know, they've maybe had one or two scenes together.
Yeah.
And she does an amazing job of just switching off and on.
Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive if you think about it. But it seemed very natural. Like, I felt like she was his wife. You know, I didn't think anything was up the first time I watched this. But the fact that it happens in the first 30 minutes that she changes on him, and you know, you realize that his memory's been erased and all this stuff. You know, I don't know. I thought it was a pretty good job. I also love the you know, that's Sharon Stone is Michael Ironside's girlfriend or whatever.
And then his little sidekick is like,
his
oh,
guy
I'm sure
is
she hated every minute.
I'm sure she hated working. I wouldn't want Quaid working for my old lady.
Like, what the hell's that supposed to mean? Their relationship, those two dudes are great together, and they're definitely like, Ironsides is not listening to Ronnie Cox's character. He like wants to kill him. And so it's interesting because it's not like it's some grand conspiracy where everybody knows what's going on. This is more.
I do feel like there's a moment though where it does turn into the game, right?
That's exactly what I was just about to reference the game.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's you know, if in the game everyone is connected at all times, I like that here right from an early spot. You have Michael Ironside's character. And his buddy, like, through jealousy and through just their anger, almost ruining the whole plot. And that Cohagen keeps coming back to him, and you go, oh, okay, so if Schwarzenegger was like Cohagen's number one, Ironside was like his number four, right? And now his number one has been brainwashed, and his number four is trying to kill his number one. And so we just get these scenes of Cohagen just bitching at him. And I'm like, that's a really fun little bit of friction that you don't see a lot in maybe movies kind of this ilk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some of the Bottin effects here.
Yeah.
I think a major one that is pretty gruesome is when he's pulling the bug out of his nose.
Oh, yeah. His nose is so big.
You know, and you could there's definitely moments where you could see Bottin's, effect on what how things look like, and you could see, when something's coming, just like in the, his other movies. It could be Inner Space, or it could be, The Thing, or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you see that kind of that dummy or the puppet come in that looks like the actor or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of this big red-haired lady. And,
Oh my God.
you know that scene where he's trying to go back
weeks.
yeah, that's all she could say. But how funny would it be to be on set with Arnold dressed up like that lady?
I know, right?
Like he's just
With these
walking
kind of
around in high
boobs
heels
and like, yeah.
It's so good.
Well,
but I don't know. Talk about his effects.
Oh man, well you nailed it
a
when
bit.
you said, and I didn't even think about this, but I think you nailed it the best when you said inner space, actually, because there are, while there is some gore related creature effects, I mean, most of it's like straight up gore effects, which again reminds me very much of RoboCop. But the stuff that feels really Botine here, whether you're talking about, you do have your Kuato, which apparently took like
yeah.
7 guys to operate all the
Wow.
different parts of it. It's an incredible looking practical effect. Just the
No doubt.
teeth and the lips and the blinking of the eyes and the eyes moving, the hands moving, all of that. And there's definitely those kinds of moments. And then, of course, we have characters like Breaking Bad's Dean Norris as
right.
as the guy with the weird mud flap on the half side of his face there. And those are really great creature effects. But I think for the most part, there are these, as you're saying, like uncanny valley kind of effects where he's pulling the bug out, or in his dream, and then later in real life where multiple characters fall out into Mars's non-atmosphere and their faces are bugging out and their eyes are bugging out. And
Yeah,
it just
great.
is this really weird effect. Now, you want to do a fun inner space connection. The character of Johnny Cab, in addition to it being modeled after this actor and using the voice of the actor, is the guy who played the cowboy from Inner Space. I can't think of the actor's name. He did a bunch of Star Trek stuff later.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that actor, they made.
I know his face.
Yep.
Yeah.
They made and have a great day, like the Johnny Cab. That's that same actor that played the cowboy.
I feel like we do have to hit on one of the most important special effects here in the Three Boobs.
We certainly do.
Let's
talk about it, Paul. You talk about it.
It's just weird. I've always thought it was weird. I never thought it was like sexy.
No.
And what's his name? The black guy cab driver is like, baby, you make me wish I had 3 hands.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny, but it's also like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. The mutant world here is pretty fun.
Well,
they do a good job with it.
I would say the 3 boob thing again, as a kid, of a certain age,
Exactly.
watching
Horny
this
white kid
movie,
in the 90s.
yeah, it's like it did make it kind of legendary. I always remember what David Fincher said about the movie Seven, is he was like, right now this is an important movie to me and to all you guys making it. He's like, but we have to cut off Gwyneth Paltrow's head and put it in a box, because 50 years from now, this will be playing on a TV channel at midnight, and somebody will be like, oh my God, it's the Head in the Box movie. He's like, they won't remember me, they won't remember any of you, they'll just remember the Head in the Box. Well, this is the 3 boob movie.
Totally.
And the only thing that really makes me sad now is it's forever been legend as the 3 boob movie. And apparently I was reading up that the actress who played,
Yeah, I read this. Yeah.
she was like she was near tears. She was so embarrassed to do this.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel so bad, because I'm like, but I look through her IMDb. I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure you've done a lot of stuff that meant a lot to you, but to the average person, you're the 3 boob lady, and you should embrace that. That shouldn't make you cry.
Are 2 of the boobs hers, and then there's a fake
There's
one? Or are
no
they all-
way. They all have to be fake. They all have to be fake. Otherwise, that would be. There would be something wrong.
I
Anyway.
love that he keeps trying to get swindled in this movie, and he still doesn't. Like you said before, he's trusting the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this scene where this guy knocks on his door, and he says, "I'm just I'm just a figment of your
Man,
like,
you've seen this
which guy's
meme
like-
that's floating around like on social media for the last couple of years, right? That's like, the meme just says, "Attention, you've been in a coma for the last 10 years. Everything you're experiencing is a dream. We've been trying to reach you. Please wake up," right? This is like the early pre-internet, pre-meme version of that, where when you watch it, it kind of messes with you, right?
Yeah. The drip of sweat is the giveaway, though, right? Love that of him making that final decision. But it's this really smart movie for the most part. The writing's really good, and then of course there's there's like 40 versions of the script I read. So
it was in turnaround
it went
since the
through
70s.
it went through a lot of different all sorts. Like we talked about, Cronenberg touched it. A lot of different people touched it.
Well,
And by the
apparently
time
they said
that
it
Verhoeven got to it, it was pretty. The sloppy seconds quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, people thought it was cursed, right? They were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, the Total Recall script, it's cursed." Because it had been, I mean, that's some like what Terry Gilliam, Man from La Mancha shit, right? Where it's like it had been in turnaround. The script had been in turnaround for what at that point 20 some odd years. Like that's insane for a script to be sitting around for that long.
For sure.
But I mean, at the same time, then what an incredible feat for this director, for both Verhoeven and Schwarzenegger to be like, we made this thing, and it broke box office records again. How, I don't understand. I mean, obviously Arnold was incredibly hot shit back then, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you're like super gory. There's nudity in it. It's got a weird title, right? The movie's got a weird title. It's got all these icky mutants and stuff in it, like, and then it's got this plot line that like is insane and should be insane to follow. And as like what, I guess at that age, like 13-year-old kid, it was the coolest shit I'd ever seen in my life. Right. And you go, that is crazy. That's crazy that all those things happened.
That it worked.
Yes, that it works, that it works. And it never feels bogged down. Like it still is introducing character after character after character, crazy 500,000-year-old architecture and like, like huge MacGuffin plot points at the last 15 minutes of the movie. And you're like, hell yeah, what's next? Let's go. Right. And it's kind of a lightning in the bottle, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think there's a lot of inventive stuff here that is still relevant. I think that's why Philip K. Dick is so renowned as well, because he was able to capture these timeless things, even though they're based a lot in the future or have this sci-fi element to it. I know a big part of this, the implant and everything. There's certain things of this movie that wasn't his, but just having that original idea behind it, you're able to grow with the world that he creates.
Yeah, well, and you're able to have, you know what? And you're absolutely right. I was thinking about this in like the last 5 minutes of the movie when Cohagen is like yelling at Quaid, and he's like, "I want my friend back, right? I want Hauser back," and he's like, "Too bad, Hauser's dead." And it made me realize that there's a really interesting thing that both Philip K. Dick did, and then definitely these writers and Verhoeven did, which is they were able to, in a really cynical world, I mean, Total Recall is a really cynical world, right? But able to create a character that's almost like a Luke Skywalker-esque good guy because he's not real, right? His body and his brain is actually the number 2 bad guy next to Cohagen. But when they wiped his brain, his ethics and his morals and his desire to do the right thing came back from this fictional character of Quaid that they built. And that's like a really fun, you can get behind that, right? And you're rooting for that guy, even though he's not real. He's an invention. And that's kind of a fun storyline that kind of memory and wiping of memory can give you. And I think that was a new revelation I had watching this last time, is I was like, oh yeah, there's no reason for him to be a good guy other than they've just blank slated all the horrible shit that Hauser had done in his life, and Quaid was a good guy. And I was like, that's kind of fun,
Yeah, that is. I hadn't thought of it that way. I want to touch on this girl fight that we have in this movie, because
pretty sweet.
It's an awesome girl fight, and it's not like a cat fight either, right? It's something that it's way more taekwondo than it is anything like that.
Totally,
like
it's brutal.
Hair pulling.
Yeah, it's way brutal.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well,
and then of course we get the consider that a divorce.
Yeah, consider it a divorce. Yeah, and I think again in that same way, it's like that is part of where a lot of that more cynical and nihilism aspect of this movie comes from, is that he shoots and kills this woman that's been his wife because the movie isn't going to be sexist about it and be like, oh well, she's a woman, so she's gonna live somehow or whatever. It's like, no, he shoots her in the head, right? And you're like, yeah, because she's one of the bad guys. Like, it's not, the movie is going to be an equal opportunity offender when it comes to the violence that it's willing to portray. And again, I think that that's important for this overall story, and why it still to this day has this really weirdly edgy feel to it, even when it's kind of corny and even when it's kind of cheesy looking. It still feels like those fight scenes are fucking brutal. And when he pulls that brace off and stabs that doctor in the neck with it, that to me forever will be like, that's messed up. I can go and watch Irreversible and I still think that scene's messed up. Like, that's a messed up scene.
Did you ever watch the remake of this with Colin? Is it Colin Farrell? I think?
Yeah. I started to, and I got bored and I turned it off.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Mars isn't in it. He doesn't go to Mars. There's no Mars. There is a three-boobed lady, but there's no Mars.
Again,
Yeah.
you know,
You gotta give the kids what they want, Palcher. I don't know if you've heard that
That's right.
before.
I want you to open your mind a little bit and talk to us about Kuato here and this baby that comes out of this guy's stomach.
I just love.
Yes.
I love where we see this, like, his reputation precedes him. We see the graffiti. You're like, the mutants think he's George Washington, and so
That's right,
that's like
yeah.
set up so early. And again,
Yeah.
like, I did this joke earlier with the synopsis where I was like, all of this stuff. The movie never gives you an exposition dump. It's all the TV's talking in the background, an offhanded comment that somebody on a train says to him, right? And then this with the mutant uprising, a piece of graffiti and a couple of cops talking to each other as they walk past our camera. It's done so well that way that once it sets up to actually meet Kuato, like, you are not prepared. And it is like the weirdest looking thing
It's totally strange.
that you've ever seen. And it's the same actor. I can't think of the actor's name right now. He's one of that guys. Another great character actor that plays the body that he's in. But that same actor is doing the voice of the little Kuato guy.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Also, the bad guy in Twins. Just putting it out there. I love I'm ramping up to another one-liner here with the I got 5 kids to feed
Yeah.
guy.
yeah. Benny.
Yeah, and to Benny, the screw you. Shouldn't it be drill you though? Because he's not screwing anything in.
Look, Quaid was in a dirt tunnel. There was this huge machine getting ready to squash him. I'm surprised he got out a one-liner at all, Adam.
How did he get away with these one-liners? That's what I want to know.
I don't know, but
just because he's Arnold.
Yes, and you know what? They work. Every one of the scenes, I'm like, consider it a divorce. I'm like, of course, of course, it's great. I don't, all of it works. Like, you are not you, you're me. No shit, right? Like, all that stuff is so good. I had so much fun watching this movie again.
I was gonna say the same thing.
So much fun.
It was a blast watching this again and just kind of, I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen it. I think we may have talked about it at some point, but I don't think in this.
I don't think we ever did like a deep review of it. But man, watching it again, it just, like I said, there's this point where you go, as you said, you put it perfectly earlier when you were like, yeah, it doesn't look like a Ridley Scott film where it's like super realistic and there's smoke everywhere and these great camera angles and all this stuff. But the attention was paid in other places and it shows when you watch it, right? And you're like, yeah, okay, so this looks like a set they built with really flat lighting, but there's super interesting characters here. There's super weird shit going on I've never seen before. And the action keeps going and it keeps you guessing of what might happen, I love it. It's so much fun to revisit.
I agree. That was a fun rewatch. Please let us know what you thought in the comments below, what you think about Total Recall in general, and what you guys got out of this. Really appreciate it. Next week, we are doing...
I believe we're going to do Starship Troopers next week.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Excited for that one. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe if you liked what you saw/heard.
Yes.
We do this every week. We're here every week, and we have festivals to play along and a bunch of other fun stuff as well. Last week, we recasted Doctor Strangelove, so go check that out. Yep. But we love you guys. Yep. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. It took me forever, mainly just because I don't really like westerns or fantasy. So it took me a really long time, but I'm finally going through the Dark Tower series, the Stephen King
Yeah, yeah.
Dark Tower series, and it's super good. Like I should have just listened to it or read it like 20 years ago, but I just
For sure. I'm in the midst of reading Dune.
Oh
So
yeah.
I've never actually read Dune. I know the movie's coming out, so I wanted to read it before that came out. But I know multiple friends who love that. It's like one of the best sci-fi books ever.
It's a thick tome though. It is it's a
Is it gonna be?
it's a political, it's just like it's kind of like political machinations and it's a there's a lot.
Yeah. Easy read.
Yeah, easy read. No problem. Just all 27 books.